In 1978, a grandmother in Gary, Indiana, raised 4 grandchildren on a pension of $312 a month. She never asked for help. She never missed a bill. When her oldest grandchild graduated college and got her first apartment, she called her grandmother crying because she could not figure out how to make the money last past the 15th of the month. Her grandmother drove 2 hours, walked through the apartment, and in one afternoon taught her 11 things she had been doing her entire life without thinking about it. 3 of those things are on this list. Number 19 made every visitor to her house uncomfortable for 40 years. Number 17 replaced an entire medicine cabinet. And number 12 turned a 5-cent packet into the only drink her grandchildren ever needed. These 20 tricks were not things Black grandparents read in a book. They were survival systems invented by people who were locked out of the American economy and figured out how to live inside it anyway. Hit that subscribe button. Let us count down the 25 hidden household tricks Black grandparents used that saved them so much money. Number 20. The butter knife toolbox. A flathead screwdriver was a butter knife. A hammer was the bottom of a shoe. A wrench was a pair of pliers that had been in the junk drawer since 1964. A level was a glass of water set on the surface. Black grandparents did not go to the hardware store. They went to the kitchen drawer. A loose cabinet hinge, a strip screw, a stuck window, a wobbly table leg. The butter knife handled all of it. A grandfather in Detroit fixed his own screen door with a butter knife and a church fan in 1981, and it held for 14 years. His grandson called a handyman for the same repair in 2019 and paid $120. The butter knife cost nothing. The knowledge cost a lifetime. Number 19. Plastic on the good furniture. Every Black household had a living room that nobody was allowed to use. The couch was wrapped in thick vinyl slipcovers that stuck to your thighs in summer and crackled every time you shifted your weight. The lampshades still had the plastic from the store. The carpet had a runner down the middle. The room was preserved for company that rarely came, and when company did come, they sat on the plastic and did not complain because their living room looked exactly the same. A 3-piece living room set bought on layaway in 1972 could last until 2005 if nobody was allowed to touch it. That was not decorating, that was an investment strategy. Number 18. Foil on the TV antenna. Before cable, before streaming, before anyone paid a monthly bill to watch television, there was an antenna on top of the set and a wad of aluminum foil wrapped around the tip. Nobody knew exactly why it worked. Everybody did it. A grandfather would spend 20 minutes adjusting the foil, tilting the antenna 2 degrees to the left, sending a grandchild to stand by the window holding one arm up, because somehow that helped too. The picture would come in clear for one channel and fuzzy for every other. That was good enough. A roll of foil cost 29 cents. Cable cost $40 a month. The foil won for 2 decades. Number 17. Vapor rub for everything. Number 17. Vapor rub for everything. A cold meant vapor rub on the chest. A headache meant vapor rub on the temples. Muscle pain meant vapor rub on the joint. Congestion meant vapor rub on the feet with socks pulled over the top before bed. A jar of vapor rub cost less than $2 and sat on the nightstand of every Black grandmother in America, like a medical degree in a glass container. Doctors prescribed antibiotics. Grandmothers prescribed vapor rub and a blanket and a bowl of soup and sleep. But wait until you hear what number 16 did with an even cheaper product. Number 16. Vaseline for everything, dry skin, ashy elbows, cracked heels, chapped lips, a scratch that did not need a Band-Aid, a doorknob that squeaked, a zipper that stuck. A jar of Vaseline cost less than $1, and it solved problems that spanned 3 aisles of a pharmacy. Black grandmothers kept a jar in the bathroom, a jar in the kitchen, and a jar in their purse. A child did not leave the house ashy. That was non-negotiable. The Vaseline came out before the front door opened, applied in a single swipe down each shin, and the child was sent into the world looking like somebody raised them right. Skincare companies now sell moisturizers for $15 that do what Vaseline did for 70 cents. Number 15, the Crown Royal Bag. The whiskey was gone in a weekend. The bag lasted 30 years. That purple velvet drawstring bag showed up in every black household holding something that had nothing to do with liquor. Dice, marbles, loose change, hair barrettes, jewelry, domino pieces, sewing needles. A grandmother in Philadelphia kept her blood pressure pills in a Crown Royal bag inside her purse from 1983 until she passed in 2014. Her granddaughter still has the bag. The whiskey company never knew they had manufactured the most repurposed container in Black American domestic history. Number 14. The butter tub that never had butter. You opened the Country Crock container expecting butter and found leftover greens. You opened the Cool Whip tub expecting dessert and found frozen neck bones. Every plastic container in a black grandmother's kitchen was a lie. Nothing was what it said it was. Margarine tubs held rice. Ice cream buckets held flour. Mason jars held bacon grease and mystery liquids that nobody was brave enough to ask about. A grandmother did not buy Tupperware. She ate what came in the container and promoted the container to permanent kitchen staff. A Cool Whip tub from 1989 served active duty in some kitchens until 2012. Number 13. The hot comb on the stove. A metal pressing comb heated on the gas burner until it was hot enough to straighten hair in a single pass. The smell of Blue Magic hair grease and singed hair on a Saturday night was the smell of getting ready for church on Sunday morning. A salon visit cost $30 to $50. The hot comb cost $3 once and lasted a lifetime. Grandmothers pressed their own hair, their daughter's hair, and their granddaughter's hair at the kitchen table with a towel draped over the shoulders and a stern warning not to move. Every black woman over 40 has a hot comb burn story. The scar was on the ear, the neck, or the forehead. And the grandmother's response was always the same. I told you not to move. Here is what most people never think about when they laugh at these tricks. Black grandparents did not save money because they were naturally frugal. They saved money because they had to. Redlining locked them out of home equity. Wage discrimination meant they earned less than white workers doing the same job. Retail discrimination meant they paid more for goods in their own neighborhoods than white families paid in theirs. The resourcefulness was not a personality trait. It was a response to an economy that was designed to take more from them and give them less. Every butter knife used as a screwdriver, every bar of soap melted into a new bar. Every plastic-covered couch preserved for 20 years was an act of economic resistance by people who understood exactly what they were up against and refused to go under. Number 12. Red Kool-Aid instead of juice. A packet cost a nickel. A bag of sugar was already in the pantry. A pitcher of red Kool-Aid mixed with twice the sugar the packet called for lasted 3 days and kept every child in the house hydrated and quiet. Orange juice cost $1.50. Apple juice cost $1.20. Kool-Aid cost 5 cents. The math was simple. The flavor did not matter. It was always red. Nobody ever asked why. Some houses kept a permanent pitcher in the refrigerator that was refilled the moment it dropped below the halfway mark. The pitcher was never empty. That was the rule. Number 11. Melting soap pieces together. When a bar of soap got too thin to hold, it was not thrown away. It was pressed onto the next bar while both were wet. The old piece melted into the new piece overnight. and the bar was whole again. A grandmother could stretch 3 bars of soap across 6 months using this technique. Some grandmothers kept a jar of soap scraps under the bathroom sink and melted them all together in a pot of hot water to make liquid soap before liquid soap existed in stores. Dial and Irish Spring and Ivory were never fully consumed in isolation. They became each other. Number 10. Turning off every light in the house. You left a room, you turned off the light. This was not a suggestion. This was law. A child who left a bathroom light on heard about it from 3 rooms away. The phrase was always the same. You paying the electric bill? The question was rhetorical. The answer was no. And the light was off before the sentence finished. A grandfather in Memphis calculated that turning off every unused light saved him $11 a month in 1985. He posted the math on the refrigerator next to a note that read, $11 is a bag of groceries. Nobody left a light on after that. Number 9 is a trick that most people have never heard of. Number 9. Bacon grease in a jar. A coffee can or a mason jar sitting beside the stove, half full of solidified drippings from every piece of bacon ever fried in that kitchen. Bacon grease was not waste. It was an ingredient. It went into cornbread, green beans, fried eggs, collard greens, and anything else that needed fat and flavor. A grandmother who saved her bacon grease never bought cooking oil. The grease was free, it was always available, and it made everything it touched taste like someone had spent hours cooking when they had spent minutes. Nutritionists demonized it in the 1970s. Recent studies show it contains less saturated fat than butter. Grandmothers did not need the study. They already knew. Number 8. Stretching everything with rice. A cup of rice turned a single pork chop into a meal for 4. A cup of rice turned a can of beans into a meal for 6. A cup of rice turned leftover gravy into tomorrow's lunch. Rice was the silent partner of every dish in the Black grandmother's kitchen. It never got the credit. It did all the work. A 25-pound bag cost less than $5 and lasted a month. No other single ingredient in the American grocery store did more for less than a bag of long-grain white rice sitting in the corner of the pantry. The dollar store replaced the grandmother. That is the trade that nobody talks about. The tricks on this list were free. They used what was already in the house. They required knowledge passed from mother to daughter across generations. Today, families spend $15 to $20 a week at dollar stores buying disposable versions of what grandmothers made from nothing. Cheap sponges that fall apart in a week, instead of old clothes cut into rags that lasted years. Plastic containers that crack after 3 uses instead of butter tubs that served for a decade. Single-use cleaning products instead of a bottle of bleach diluted to last 6 months. The dollar store economy looks cheap. Over a year, it costs more than the grandmother's way ever did. We traded knowledge for convenience, and we are paying more for less. Number 7. Cardboard inside the shoes. When the sole of a shoe wore through, a grandmother cut a piece of cardboard from a cereal box, traced the shape of the sole, and slid it inside. The cardboard lasted about a week before it wore through and was replaced with another piece. A child could walk on cardboard insoles for a month, until payday. It was not comfortable, it was not ideal, but it meant the child went to school with shoes on, looking like everyone else, and nobody had to know that the bottom of those shoes was held together by a cornflakes box. Number 6. Saving every bone for broth. Chicken bones, ham bones, turkey necks, pork bones. Nothing with marrow left the kitchen in the trash. The bones went into a pot of water with an onion and whatever vegetables were going soft in the crisper. And they simmered for hours until the water turned into stock that formed the base of every soup, every pot of beans, and every pot of rice for the rest of the week. A grandmother who saved her bones never bought a can of broth. The bones were free. The stock they produced was better than anything on a store shelf. The only cost was time. And grandmothers who had spent their working lives on someone else's clock understood exactly how to use their own. Number 5. Hot sauce on everything. A bottle of Louisiana hot sauce cost 69 cents and it lasted a month. It turned plain rice into a meal. It turned beans into something worth eating twice. It turned leftovers into something that tasted intentional instead of recycled. The bottle sat on the kitchen table at every meal, not in the cabinet, on the table, within reach, because it was not a condiment. It was a tool. A tool that made a 70-cent dinner taste like a $2 dinner and a $2 dinner taste like something you would order in a restaurant. Number 4. Sugar sandwiches and struggle snacks. 2 slices of white bread with butter and a thick layer of granulated sugar. That was a snack. Sometimes it was dinner. Syrup sandwiches were the variation. Mayonnaise sandwiches were the other variation. A sleeve of saltines with peanut butter was a meal that cost 12 cents and kept a child full until morning. These were not recipes, they were solutions. A grandmother who served a sugar sandwich was not failing to feed her grandchild. She was feeding her grandchild with what was in the cupboard when nothing else was, and she was doing it without the child knowing anything was wrong. That was the skill, not the sandwich, the performance of normalcy around it. Number 3. Turning leftovers into a new meal. Sunday's roast became Monday's stew. Monday's stew became Tuesday's soup. Tuesday's soup became Wednesday's rice and gravy. A single piece of protein worked its way through an entire week, transforming each night into something different enough that children did not realize they were eating the same ingredient 4 days in a row. The grandmother's trick was never repetition. It was disguise. She changed the shape, the sauce, the side, and the context until the meal felt new. A pot roast that cost $4 on Sunday had fed a family of 6 by Thursday. Nobody in that house ever said, "We are having the same thing again," because technically, they were not. There is a generation right now that is the last living connection to these tricks. Not because the tricks are complicated, because the patience and the knowledge required to live this way cannot be taught from a video or a list. It was taught by standing in a kitchen next to a woman who had done it for 50 years, watching her hands, learning her system. When she melted the soap, you saw how wet the pieces needed to be. When she saved the grease, you learned which jar to use and how to strain it. When she put cardboard in the shoes, you watched her trace the sole and cut the shape. The tricks are simple. The transmission is not. And when the woman who carried the knowledge is gone, the tricks go with her. Not because nobody wrote them down, because nobody stood close enough to learn. Number 2, fixing everything with duct tape. A cracked sole on a shoe, a ripped seam in a backpack strap, a leaking pipe under the sink. A car bumper held on after a fender bender. A window screen with a tear. A hem that came undone 10 minutes before church. A roll of duct tape cost $1.49, and it held the entire household together in ways that would have horrified a professional repairman. A grandmother in Atlanta fixed her grandson's lunchbox with duct tape in 1986. He used that lunchbox through 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. The duct tape outlasted the zipper, the handle, and the school itself. He still has the lunchbox in his closet. The tape is still holding. Number 1, the grandmother herself. There is no trick at number 1 because the greatest money-saving device in any black household was not a product, a technique, or a shortcut. It was the woman who knew all of them. She kept the jar of grease by the stove and the Vaseline in her purse and the soap scraps under the sink. She melted, stretched, repurposed, recycled, and refused to throw away a single thing that still had one more use left in it. She did not call it sustainability. She did not call it minimalism. She did not call it a hack. She called it Tuesday. And she did it so quietly, so consistently, and so effectively that her grandchildren did not realize, until they were adults paying their own bills, that the woman who raised them on $312 a month had been performing a daily economic miracle that no financial advisor has ever been able to replicate. Here's my challenge. Call your grandmother this week, or your mother, or your auntie. Ask her about the jar by the stove. Ask her about the butter tub. Ask her about the tricks she did with the soap. Write it down, because these were not just ways to save money. They were a complete operating system for survival, built by women who had every reason to give up and never did. Drop the trick your grandmother was known for in the comments. I want to know if the plastic on the furniture gets more love than the Vapo Rub. I want to know if anyone else's grandmother kept a Crown Royal bag full of blood pressure pills. Because these were not just household tricks. They were proof that the people who had the least knew the most.